Hello, class. Welcome to George's Marvelous Medicine, Day 7. When we left off, Grandma had just grown and grown up through the ceiling and even took more medicine so she would keep growing. Now, she's threatening to go through the roof, and George is like, what is Dad gonna think if she ruins the roof? So I asked you, what do you think will happen when George's mom or dad gets home? And you said they're going to be very mad. He's going to get grounded. Maybe they'll be confused. They might yell. They might be happy that Grandma is getting fresh air. They might be, Grandma might tell on George. And yeah, so a lot of angry and confusion, getting in trouble, that sort of thing. So we will see if that is the case. Chapter 8, The Brown Hen. George stood in the farmyard, looking up at the roof. The old farmhouse had a fine roof of pale red tiles and tall chimneys. There was no sign of Grandma. There was only a song thrush sitting on one of the chimney pots, singing a song. The old Wurzel got stuck in the attic, George thought. Thank goodness for that. Suddenly, a tile came clattering down from the roof and fell into the yard. I'm guessing that means she didn't get stuck in the roof. The thrush took off fast and flew away, and a thrush is a type of bird. Then another tile came down. Then half a dozen more. So a dozen is 12, and half of that, 12 divided by 2, would be 6. 6 more tiles. And then, very slowly, like some weird monster rising from the deep, Grandma's head came through the roof, then her scrawny neck, and the tops of her shoulders. How am I doing, boy? She shouted. How's that for a bash-up? Don't you think you'd better stop now, Grandma? George called out. I have stopped, she answers. I feel terrific. Didn't I tell you I had magic powers? Didn't I warn you I had wizardry in the tips of my fingers? She's going back to when she was talking about the vegetables with bugs in them. But you wouldn't listen to me, would you? You wouldn't listen to your old grandma. You didn't do it, Grandma, George shouted back. I did it. I made you a new medicine. I don't know if I'd want to take credit for this. I'd let Grandma say it was her fault. But George doesn't want all of his hard work to go unnoticed. Here is a picture of Grandma poking through the roof. You can see the top of her head, her neck, her shoulders, and even some more. New medicine? You? What rubbish! And rubbish is like a British word for garbage. Like, that's not true. There's no way you could have made me a new medicine. She yelled. I did, George shouted. You're lying as usual, Grandma yelled. You're always lying. I'm not lying, Grandma. I swear I'm not. The wrinkled old face, high up on the roof, stared down suspiciously at George. Are you telling me you actually made a new medicine by yourself? She shouted. Yes, Grandma, all by myself. I don't believe you, she answered, but I'm very comfortable up here. Fetch me a cup of tea. So even after growing, she's still bossing him around. Doesn't sound like the medicine's made her any nicer. A brown hen was pecking about in the yard close to where George was standing. The hen gave him an idea. What do you think that hen made him think of? What would his idea be? We'll see if you're right. Quickly, he uncorked the medicine bottle and poured some of the brown stuff onto a spoon. "Watch this, Grandma!" he shouted. He crouched down, holding the spoon to the hen. "Chicken," he said. "Chick, chick, chicken. Come here. Have some of this." Chickens are stupid birds and very greedy. They think everything is food. This one thought it was a spoonful of corn. It hopped over. Here's a picture of George feeding the chicken some medicine. The brown hen stretched out its neck towards the spoon and went peck. It got a beak full of medicine. The effect was electric. "Owie!" shrieked the hen, and shot right up into the air like a rocket. It went as high as the house. Then down it came. Again into the yard. Splush! And there it sat with its feathers all sticking straight out from its body. There was a look of amazement on its silly face. George stood watching. Grandma, up on the roof, was watching it too. That is interesting. What do you think? I think maybe the hen will happen exactly what Grandma had happen. So her hair standing on end is like the feathers sticking straight out. And she shot up like a rocket, and so did he. Then it got to its feet, rather shaky, and began making funny gurgling noises in its throat. Do you remember what happened next to Grandma? That's right. She caught on fire. Its beak was opening and shutting. It seemed like a pretty sick hen. "You've done it in, stupid boy," Grandma shouted. "The hen is going to die. Your father will be after you now. He'll give you socks and serve you right." All of a sudden, black smoke started pouring out of the hen's beak. "It's on fire!" Grandma yelled. "The hen is on fire!" George ran to the water trough to get a bucket of water. Yep, just like Grandma. There's a picture of the hen flying through the air. And then a picture of the hen catching on fire. That hen will roast and ready for eating at any moment, Grandma shouted. George sloshed a bucket of water over the hen. There was a sizzling sound, and the smoke went away. "Old hen laid its last egg," Grandma shouted. "Hens don't do any laying after they've been on fire." So here's the hen all doused in water, putting the fire out. And Grandma is definitely very negative. She wants bad things to happen to George. There was a sizzling sound, and then the smoke went away. "Old hens laid its last eggs," Grandma shouted. "Hens don't lay any eggs after they've been on fire." Now the fire was out. The hen seemed better. It stood up properly. It flapped its wings. Then it crouched down low to the ground, as though getting ready to jump. It did jump. It jumped high in the air and turned a complete somersault, and then landed back on its feet. "It's a circus hen," Grandma shouted from the rooftop. "It's a flipping acrobat." Now the hen began to grow. I don't remember Grandma flipping, so maybe hens are slightly different. But I did do some of the same things Grandma did. Here is the hen while it's doing its somersault. George had been waiting for this to happen. "It's growing," he yelled. "It's growing, Grandma. Look, it's growing." Bigger and bigger, taller and taller it grew. Soon the hen was 4 or 5 times normal size. Can you see it, Grandma? George shouted. I can see it, boy. The old woman shouted back. I'm watching. So here's a series of pictures showing the hen growing. First it's as big as George. Then it gets even bigger than George. And then even taller than that. George was hopping from one foot to the other with excitement, pointing at the enormous hen and shouting, It had the magic medicine, Grandma, and it's growing just like you did. But there's a difference between the way the hen was growing and the way Grandma grew. When the hen grew taller and taller, when Grandma grew taller and taller, she got thinner and thinner. But the hen didn't. It stayed nice and plump all along. Let's look at that picture again. Yeah, it still looks like a hen. It doesn't look like a stretched out hen. Looks like a nice, thick, juicy hen. I wonder if that's an advantage or a disadvantage of the animals. Soon it was taller than George, but it didn't stop there. It went right growing up until it was about as big as a horse. Then it stopped. Could you imagine a chicken as big as a horse? Doesn't it look marvelous, Grandma? George shouted. It's not as tall as me, Grandma sang out. Compared with me, the hen is a little bit small. I'm the tallest of them all. So in the next chapter, I don't want to give anything away yet. It is when George's parents come home. So tomorrow we will see what exactly does happen when George's mom and dad come home and now find Grandma is a giant and one of their hens is a giant. So we will see tomorrow in the next chapter.